This is an exciting conclusion to our Children's Literature Festival this year. We were determined to persevere, so we went virtual this year, and we've had, I think, maybe 7,000? Over 10,000 views so far of the Literature Festival. So it's been a very successful festival, and it's a great evening to have you all gathered here at the Wilder home. Tonight we honor those who contributed to the pages of children's literature. We honor the legacy of Laura Ingalls Wilder, the illustrations of Higgins Bond, and the writing talent of David Harrison. And I'd like for you to give them all a round of applause as we begin the evening. To give us an official welcome, it's my pleasure to introduce Joe Cody, who's president of the Laura Ingalls Wilder Association, if you'll make him welcome.
Thank you, John. I just want to say, on behalf of the board, that welcome, and we are very excited and proud of this new award, and looking forward to it lasting for many, many years and decades going forward. Thank you and welcome again.
Thank you, Joe. Tonight's presentation would not be possible without the hard work and dedication of a great committee, and many of them are seated behind me, but I'd like for them to stand as I introduce them tonight. Marie Bristol, Annie Bush, Gayla Hancock, who couldn't be here tonight, but did a wonderful job of putting together the refreshments, Vicki Johnson, Terry Myers, who was under the weather this evening, Julie Thomas, Michelle Underwood, and Kim Ward, who also could not be here. If you'd give them a round of applause of gratitude. The Children's Literature Festival came about from a conversation a couple years ago between myself and Gene Cody as a way to further honor the legacy of Laura Ingalls Wilder. And last year, with our inaugural year, we combined with the Missouri Cherry Blossom Festival and had a very successful year. And this year we were so excited to be able to hold the event in Mansfield. So we hope that you'll watch for next year, as we are so hopeful that we'll be able to bring our authors here to Mansfield and see the children visit here at Rocky Ridge Farm, which is certainly the highlight of the Children's Literature Festival, to walk where America's greatest children's author walked, where she wrote their books, and to see all of that come to life. To be quite honest, I think Mrs. Wilder would be very honored to see that her name is attached to an award that is presented to her colleagues. And to present the first presentation tonight, I want to introduce Vicki Johnston, who is Secretary of the Literature Festival, and whose work has been endless in preparation for tonight to present our first award. If you'll make her welcome.
The very purpose of this evening proved to be a year in the making. After our first festival in the spring of 2019, the Laura Ingalls Wilder Children's Literature Festival Committee voted to create this award in the name of Laura Ingalls Wilder. We contacted a gentleman whose work came to our notice through the America the Beautiful Quarters program. An artist named Ron Sanders created the reverse image of our Missouri State Park quarter. That quarter was released in 2017, and it reflects Alley Spring Mill. I met Ron that day that the quarter was launched. It was an honor to meet the artist that drew the image. So from that meeting, I never forgot him. And the day that coin went into circulation, I remembered him. He was a standout, and his art was beautiful, and it's in everybody's pocket all over the United States. So from that meeting, I made a telephone call, and it was to Ron Sanders. He was so privileged and happy that he was contacted by the Wilder Home Museum and this committee to fashion this design and make the art. So he said it would be a great pleasure to be involved. We felt that Ron captured the 1906 photo of Mrs. Wilder perfectly. So after the physical creation of this award, our committee voted that Mrs. Wilder should receive the prize posthumously. It is my great privilege to present as an addition to Mrs. Wilder's collection this award that bears her name to Miss Tana Redmond. She is the curator and the faithful steward of the museum collection, and may you display it with pride.
I still find myself trying to smile for pictures, even though nobody can tell. I would like to thank Vicki and thank the Literature Festival Committee on Mrs. Wilder's behalf. And after the ceremony, I would like to invite everybody to come into the gallery where Mrs. Wilder's award will be placed with her others. Thank you.
Our illustrator tonight, Higgins Bond, could not join us. But if you notice on the back of your program, there is a picture of Higgins during the presentation of her award, which occurred a couple weeks ago in Nashville, Tennessee, the place that she calls home. And I'll share with you, Higgins was so grateful to be the first illustrator chosen. She expressed that when she began to study art, she was not only one of the few women to be studying at that time, but also one of the few African Americans. And there were many times throughout her career when things were very difficult, and especially as she's advanced in her career, she said, I just want you to express on my behalf what a great honor this is, and it's the pinnacle of my career, and I wish I could join the people in Missouri, but I know that she is watching from a distance tonight. So if you would congratulate her as our first illustrator to receive the Literature Award. Our next honoree is being honored for his written work. David Harrison has published 100 books, including poetry, fiction, and nonfiction for young readers and educational books for teachers. He is Poet Laureate of Drury University, and David Harrison Elementary School is named in his honor. His work has been anthologized in approximately 200 books, translated into 12 languages, sandblasted into a library sidewalk in Phoenix, Arizona, painted on a bookmobile in Pueblo, Colorado, and presented on television, radio, podcast, and video stream. David has given keynote talks, college commencement addresses, and been featured at hundreds of conferences, workshops, literature festivals, and schools across America. He holds science degrees from Drury and Emory universities. 2 universities have presented him with honorary Doctorate of Letters. Among dozens of awards, 2 of David's books of poetry, Pirates and Crawley Schools Above, have been represented from Missouri in 2013 and 18 respectively at the National Book Fair in Washington, D.C. The Society of Midland Authors have honored his books of poetry with its Children's Nonfiction Literacy Award for books published in 2016. David is here tonight with his lovely wife, Sandy, from Springfield, if you'd make her welcome as well. Behind every great author is a great muse. And it is indeed my honor to welcome him tonight and to present him with this award. If you would join me in congratulating David this evening. You can hold it.
Reverend Edmund, thank you so much for that and for your kind words. And I'd like to also thank some other guests besides my wife, Sandy, our daughter, Robin, and her husband, Tim Williams. our grandson Chris Williams, our grandson Tyler Williams, and Josie Shute, special guest Leon Cohn, Tom Parnell, and the ones who win the award for coming to Farmers from Colorado, Susan and Dan Hutchins. So thank you so much for making the trip. Those of us who dedicate so much of our lives to creating books for children, and Larry and Marianne Wakefield, forgive me for whizzing right by you a moment ago, but lifelong friends are here. Thank you so much. But those of us who spend so much of our time doing this, just love it when somebody notices. And this is a whale of a way to be noticed, and I'm just humbled to have my name associated with one of the all-time favorite storytellers America has ever known. So this is something I will cherish. This year marked my 51st anniversary since my first book for children was published in 1969. But it wasn't easy getting there, and I'm not going to take you through step by step, so relax. My wife couldn't tolerate that. But I will give you a couple of highlights, and one started at Drury. That's where I got my undergraduate degree, and I was a science major, geology minor, so for 3.5 years, my courses were chemistry, physics, mathematics, geology, zoology, botany, and so on. And as I was getting ready to enroll for my last semester, my senior year, the academic dean at that time, Frank Clippinger, called me into his office and told me that I had to take other courses, that I was making a mockery, as he put it, of Drury's philosophy of a well-balanced graduated student. The liberal arts education required that we'd go out into the world better prepared than just having a major. So he told me he didn't care what I took that last semester as long as it wasn't more science. And I enrolled in drama and comparative schools of psychoanalytic thought, American history, and a writing course. I was 21 years old, walked into this class for writers, and the professor, Clark Graham, said, well, I don't care what you write in here, you can do anything you want to. Write poetry, write a story, write a play, start a novel, and I just was reduced to jello. In all my years, no one had ever asked me to write a story. I grew up in a time when we did book reports, and we did essays, and we built little volcanoes, and we made maps of Europe and whatnot, but nobody ever said, make up something. So I did eventually make up something, but it was about a spider and a wasp fighting to the death. I've seen many times. And at the end of that semester, Dr. Graham called me aside and told me that he thought I had the makings of a writer. Well, that hit home with me, and I don't know why, but it did. And many, many years later, I was to write about that moment, that life-changing moment, in a book called Connecting Dots. Me, a writer. Dr. Graham says, keep it up. I might become a writer. Me, a writer? No way. But wouldn't that be something? I pull my story out again, read his notes. He says I can. Shouldn't even be here. Me, a science major. That's why I wrote about the wasp. But I think he thinks I can. But teachers are optimistic, aren't they? I hold my story and read it again. Well, if I could. Who cares, right? Too many things to think about. Graduating, getting married, graduate school, me a writer, no way. It wouldn't be something. Without knowing I'm going to, I become a writer. But not right away. I finished Missouri, went on to Emory in Atlanta, and took my degree there in something called parasitology. I studied a particular parasite, a little tapeworm called Hymenolopus diminuta. And I began to write at night a little bit. We finished there. Mom came along. We moved to Evansville, Indiana, and I became a pharmacologist from E. Johnson. I studied the brain and spinal cord in laboratory animals. Well, in 1963, after 4 years of trying and a growing pile of rejections, I still hadn't made a sale. I didn't much care for what I was doing during the day, and I was frustrated by the rejections I was getting with my writing at night, and so I convinced myself I needed a change. And my wife, bless her, supported me. And I began to write letters all around the Midwest. You don't know me, but would you hire me kind of letters. Almost nobody cared. I eventually did wind up at Hallmark Cards in Kansas City as an editor. Well, after 7 years and 67 rejections, I finally sold my first story, and I was paid $5.03. Most important check I ever had. I kept at it. It's hard. It's hard to keep at it when you keep getting turned down. But eventually, I began to get editors saying things like, well, I like this. Let me take this to committee. And if you just rewrite this part and maybe tweak this a little bit, well, a writer, especially a desperate one, you get your hopes up and you keep thinking, yes, I'm going to do it. This is going to be it. Which prompted me to this poem, which I borrowed from Shakespeare. Thou kind of year thou mayst in me behold. With apologies to William. Long I've slaved o'er words you now behold, where participles dangled none doth hang. Set upon each line with pen made bold, by promises I thought your letter sang. In me thou seest an earnest bard laid low. As I behold through grief-rimmed eyes your note, as from a deathbed room perfumed by woe, thou didn't care for any word I wrote. In me thou seest the glowing of desire, though on the ashes of defeat I lie. That on the morrow purified by ire, I'll rise consumed by that which makes me try to pen what thou perceivest as sweet and strong, which you'll love well and beg from me ere long. I don't think Mr. Shakespeare would mind too much my doing that, but that wasn't for publication anyway. That was just for me, and now a burden with it. After 8 years, 1 month, 152 submissions, I sold my first book, The Boy with the Drum. And in 1969, it was published. Now, you'll be grateful to know that I'm going to skip ahead to 1982. Actually, 1979, that's when Drury University awarded Sandy with an Outstanding Alumni Award. And 2 years later, in 81, they gave that to me. And as usual, she was at least 2 years ahead of me. So the next year, 82, Sandy and I felt the duty bound to attend the Alumni Award banquet just to give support. So we sat at a table in the back of the room. Now, when we were received ours, we were told very strictly, you have 5 minutes, count them, and then sit down. Well, the two people who received it in 1982 were both nice people. They just had a lot to say. And after 20, 25 minutes or so each, we were all uncomfortable. John Moore was president of Drury at that time, and I could see Moore sitting up there trying to sit up straight and pay attention and nod as though he really did enjoy every minute and every word. And so while he was doing that, I was sitting at the table making up a poem, which I finished later that night and presented to Dr. Moore. It goes like this. We gave the floor to this crushing bore and asked him to address us. Long ago his time was gone, yet he blathers on, determined to impress us. My hair was brown when I sat down to hear his bilious blow. Now it's gray, and I've no doubt that which has it withered out is turning white as snow. My beard was spare when I took a chair to listen to him spew. Now it's curly in my lap. Everybody craves a nap. God, I need one too. Panic and pain are pleadingly plain on all these tortured faces. So much water, coffee, tea. Every soul has got to pee. Still the loony races. I dream about just slipping out. I yearn with all my might. But I run the risk of looking rude. And even though the speaker's crude, two rudes don't make a right. If I survive this night alive, if I don't die from boredom, no more tales by gassy men of super feats, amazing kin, and the thousands who adore them. Now, when Dr. Moore got that poem, he had me come in and sign it, and he framed it, put it on the wall, and named me Drury's Poet Laureate. And from that point on, recipients of the Alumni Awards were invited to stand at their seat and say thank you. Since then, they've loosened up a little bit, but I did change history. And then later, when Todd Parnell inherited me, he was kind enough to allow me to continue as Drury's Poet Laureate and supported me in some very serious ways in my efforts to help make poetry a more acceptable and better known entity and a representing part of Drury University. And since then, two more presidents have found it in their hearts to keep me on. I don't know whether I'm just going to wind up being under a time capsule sometime or what. So far, I'm still here. Well, so here we are, 2020. What a year. Today's political scene, of course, will make Mark Twain a lot of money writing stories about it. And we all look like a game of Earl Whack-A-Mole with this pandemic thing popping up and down and hiding. But I've had the most productive year I've ever had. I've had 4 new books this year. It's unheard of. Numbers 97, 98, 99, and 100. After Dark, which is a book of my poems about animals that prefer to be active after the sun goes down. Rum Pum Pum, which I think there's a picture up here of that too. I co-wrote with another writer, Jane Yolen. Guided Practice for Reading Growth. I co-authored with a reading specialist, Laura Robb, for kids, students grades 4 through 8 who are at least 2 years behind in their reading level. And Empowering Students' Knowledge of Vocabulary, which I co-authored with a language expert, Mary Jo Fresh, to provide insight into how language works for grades 3 to 5. So I'm a very happy guy. Although 13 of my books have been for teachers, 41 for fiction, 26 have been for nonfiction, and 20 have been for poetry. So I'll end with 2 poems from this year's books. The first one is from After Dark, and it's Toothy Grin. I'm not going to try to hold up books, it's just too awkward, and I'll drop something. This is about a fox, kit fox. When a fox emerges from the dark, first you see the blackberry nose, then the grin that hides stiletto teeth. Above the teeth, luminous eyes, ears like antennae tuned to you. Behind the teeth, luxurious coat, glorious bushy tail. If you are a mouse, frog, rabbit, if you are a squirrel, grasshopper, crayfish, all you'll see is a fox in the dark are the teeth, the teeth, the teeth. And the last one is from a book that I don't think is up here yet, it's too new. This is one that I mentioned. And this is the one for kids who need some help and who are struggling with their reading. So I'm going to read this poem from that book. And my charge was to find things to write about, poems and texts that might be of interest, hook the interest of struggling readers and help them want to try a little bit harder and stay with it. So this is called Ode to the Skunk. It's well you dwell within your skin, protected from the stink you spout, while victims hate their fate, no doubt, the agony of breathing in the fumes of skunkly discontent. Armed with dreadful, stinkful scent, marching fearlessly by night, you frighten enemies to flight, turn when vexed, take aim and vent, or on anything that comes too near. Flaunting, famous, daunting rear, you rule the evening woods by fear. That may not be the highlight to end on, a stinky rear, but so be it. And again, I appreciate more than I can say what this evening means to me, and I know that these are trying times, and I appreciate so much everyone being here to help me feel good. To the committee who created all this, I thank you. And to the Turner Foundation for sponsoring, I'm grateful. I have a full heart as I tell you thank you and good night.
Very well said. Thank you, Mr. Hayes. Vicky, could I ask you to come forward and help me with the presentation? As I mentioned, behind every great writer is a wonderful muse, and I'd like Sandy to stand. We have a gift for you this evening. She's like, oh no. A beautiful bouquet for a beautiful lady.
I'm not home for you. Oh, thank you. Yes. That's magnificent. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
In discussing the formation of the Children's Literature Festival, Mrs. Cody said she would give her blessing under one condition, and that was if we were to ask Annie Bush to be the honorary chairperson. And Annie has been a wonderful addition to our committee and had led the committee that organized this evening. And Annie, the middle arrangement is for yours, for you to enjoy to take home. So we thank you. Give her another round of applause. And Marie and Michelle, there's little arrangements for you all for your work in helping with the schedule, and then also Marie for working on the programs and the invitations. So we thank you for that. And it wouldn't be a gathering at the Wilder home without listening to the wonderful sounds from Paul's fiddle. And we are so pleased to have Brett Dudenhofer here tonight to perform the honors. So if you would put your hands together for Brett and enjoy the sounds of Possible. gift shop and the wonderful refreshments. I'm sure that Mr. Harrison will be glad to visit with you or sign autographs there at the table. And maybe we can convince Brett to continue to play as we depart this evening. Thank you for being here tonight. Congratulations to our honorees, and thank you to the committee again. It was a wonderful evening. Thank you.